Lesson 4. The Lord hears and delivers. Memory text. The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their troubles. Psalms 34:17. Many of the Psalms emphasize the majesty and might of God, highlighting His sovereignty over the universe. In these passages, God is often portrayed as the creator and ruler of all things. At the same time, the Psalms also emphasize the importance of obedience to God and having a personal relationship with Him. Throughout the book, there are expressions of devotion, trust, and submission to God's will. The psalmists often acknowledge God's authority and seek to align their lives with His commandments. Psalm chapter 145:18. The Lord is near to all who call on Him, to all who call on Him in truth. The book of Psalms reiterates both the might and rule of God over the universe and the importance of personal obedience and relationship with Him. The psalmists convey a deep sense of reverence for God's power, while acknowledging the significance of living in accordance with His will.
My frame was not hidden from you. Psalm chapter 139 verses 1 to 18 is a passage that expresses the psalmist's contemplation of God's attributes, specifically focusing on God's power, presence, and goodness. The psalmists acknowledge that God knows everything about them. God is aware of their thoughts, actions, and even the words they speak. This reflects the omnipotence and all-knowing nature of God. The psalmists reflect on the impossibility of escaping from God's presence. Whether they ascend to the heavens or descend to the depths, God is there. This emphasizes the omnipresence of God, indicating that there is no place where God is not. The psalmist marvels at God's role as the creator. They express gratitude for being fearfully and wonderfully made by God. This highlights God's goodness in intricately designing and forming each individual. The psalmists acknowledge that God has a plan for their lives. Every day is written in God's book, indicating divine sovereignty over their existence. This recognition of God's plan and purpose reflects the goodness of God's intentions for each person. The psalmist's contemplation of God's greatness in Psalm chapter 139 strengthens confidence in the reliability, assurance, and fulfillment of God's promises. The attributes of omniscience, omnipresence, creativity, and sovereignty all contribute to a deep trust in the faithfulness of God's commitments to His people. These passages allude to God knowing all about us, including our bad thoughts and deeds. For some, including Christians, this might make us fearful and apprehensive about God. We can look to the gospel for comfort and assurance. The gospel reassures believers that God's knowledge is accompanied by His love, grace, and redemptive power. It transforms the fear of being known by God into a source of comfort, drawing individuals into a deeper and more meaningful relationship with their Creator.
Assurance of God's care. Psalm chapter 40 verses 1 to 3 emphasizes the active involvement of God in the lives of those who trust and wait on Him. In these verses, the psalmist expresses a personal experience of waiting on the Lord and being rescued from a difficult situation. It highlights God's responsiveness to prayers and His ability to lift people out of challenging circumstances. The imagery of being lifted from a pit and placed on solid ground signifies God's intervention in our lives. The psalmist also mentions the impact of this intervention, leading to a sense of gratitude and praise. Psalm chapter 40 verses 1 to 3 emphasizes the active involvement of God in the lives of those who trust and wait on Him. In Psalm chapter 121, the power of God expressed is His watchful care and protection. The psalmist acknowledges that help comes from the Lord, who is the maker of heaven and earth. The imagery used includes God's vigilant watch over the individual. The Lord is described as one who neither slumbers nor sleeps, emphasizing the continuous and unwavering nature of God's attention. The psalm further elaborates on the protective aspects of God's power, stating that the Lord will not let their foot slip and will keep them from all harm. The Lord is portrayed as a constant presence, providing shade and protection day and night. Psalm chapter 121 underscores the reassuring power of God's care and protection over the lives of those who trust in Him.
The Lord is a refuge in adversity. In Psalm chapter 91 verses 2-7, the psalmist expresses unwavering trust in God during times of trouble. The verses emphasize seeking refuge in the Lord, finding protection under His wings, and relying on God as a fortress and shield. The psalmist remains confident in God's faithfulness and steadfastly believes in divine deliverance and safety, even in the face of danger. The psalmist begins by stating that he will trust in the Lord for refuge and safety. God is described as a fortress and a shield, symbolizing protection. The psalmist believes that with this trust, believers can confidently face challenges without fear. The psalmist acknowledges the presence of dangers, such as pestilence and destruction, but asserts that he need not fear these threats. God is portrayed as a shield, and the psalmist's trust in Him serves as a source of confidence even in the midst of adversity. The psalmist describes how thousands may fall all around, but disaster will not come near. This suggests a belief in God's ability to provide protection amid widespread challenges. Psalm chapter 91 verses 2-7 expresses a deep trust in God as a source of refuge and protection in the face of various dangers. We can have confidence in God's shielding presence, enabling us to face adversity without fear. Psalm chapter 17 verse 8, "Keep me as the apple of your eye. Hide me in the shadow of your wings." The apple of God's eye signifies a special and cherished status. It suggests that God values and cares for the psalmist deeply, much like someone would protect and prioritize their own eye. This intimate connection brings hope, as it looks forward to a personal and loving relationship with Jesus. Hiding in the shadow of God's wings conveys a sense of refuge and shelter. Just as a bird protects its young under its wings, the psalmist seeks refuge in the comforting and secure presence of God. Jesus brings us hope by assuring us that we are under His watchful care and safety.
Defender and Deliverer. The passage 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verses 1-4 speaks about the Israelites' journey through the desert and their experiences with Moses. One spiritual lesson that can be derived from this passage is the importance of relying on God's guidance and provision in our spiritual journey. The cloud and the sea symbolize the guidance and protection of God, and the spiritual food and drink represent the sustenance and nourishment that come from a relationship with Christ. Additionally, it emphasizes the need for unity among believers, as they were all baptized into Moses. This unity is not only a symbol of solidarity, but also a reminder of the communal aspect of the Christian faith. Psalm chapter 114 verses 1-8 poetically describes the divine deliverance of the people of Israel from Egypt. In these verses, the poet uses vivid and dramatic imagery to depict the miraculous events surrounding the exodus of Israel from Egypt. The language is metaphorical and portrays nature itself, responding to the presence and power of God. The sea is described as fleeing, and the Jordan River is said to turn back, symbolizing the miraculous parting of the waters during the Israelites' escape. The mountains are depicted as skipping like rams, and the hills like lambs, emphasizing the awe-inspiring nature of God's intervention in the natural world. The poet asks rhetorical questions to emphasize the significance of these events, questioning the sea, the Jordan, the mountains, and the hills about why they responded to God's presence in such a remarkable way. The conclusion of the psalm expresses a call for the earth to tremble at the Lord's presence, highlighting the divine power that transformed a rock into a pool and flint into a spring of water during the journey. Spiritual dangers for Christians can vary, but can include moral pitfalls, temptations, false teachings, and spiritual complacency. Christians may face moral challenges. Temptations can lead Christians away from their faith or cause them to compromise. Psalms can help you pray for strength and actively avoid situations that may lead to temptation. False teachings may distort Christian beliefs and lead believers astray. Reading Psalms can help to discern truth, stay connected to a doctrinally sound church, and seek guidance from trusted spiritual leaders. Becoming spiritually complacent can hinder growth and lead to a lukewarm faith. The Psalms can help cultivate a vibrant prayer life, engage in regular worship, and continue to seek spiritual growth through learning and service.
Help from the sanctuary. Psalm chapter 20 verse 2. May he send you help from the sanctuary, and grant you support from Zion. The psalmist expresses a desire for divine assistance and support. Help coming from the sanctuary emphasizes the belief that God's aid originates from his holy dwelling place. Zion is used symbolically to represent the dwelling place of God, further emphasizing divine support. Psalm chapter 27 verse 5. For in the day of trouble, he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent, and set me high upon a rock. The psalmist declares his trust in God's shelter and refuge, especially in times of trouble. He believes that God will hide and conceal him, providing a secure and elevated place of safety. Being concealed under the cover of God's tent further emphasizes the idea of finding safety and security in God's presence. It conveys an image of being shielded from external threats. Hebrews chapter 4 verses 15 to 16. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. The parallels between Hebrews here and various Psalms lie in the themes of God's compassion, understanding of human weakness, the availability of mercy and grace, and the encouragement to approach God with confidence in times of need. Hebrews emphasizes the role of Jesus as a sympathetic high priest and encourages believers to approach the throne of grace. The Psalms often mention the sanctuary or the presence of God as a place of refuge, worship, and seeking divine help. Hebrews talks about approaching the throne of grace for help, and Psalms express the desire to dwell in the house of the Lord, seeking God's presence and guidance. The sanctuary, or dwelling in the house of the Lord, symbolizes a place where believers seek God and find solace. With the coming of Jesus, there is a shift from a physical temple or sanctuary to a new covenant established by Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. The earthly sanctuary or temple is now seen as symbolic, and now we seek and find refuge in Jesus.
Thank you for studying with us. Please like and subscribe, and always keep the faith of Jesus.